Welcome to the Break the Bias Global Podcast on diversity, equity, and inclusion, featuring women and men from different cultures, experiences, and professions coming together on thought-provoking episodes to challenge the narrative, gain insights, and get inspired. Powerful topics right here to help you shatter your glass ceiling. Thanks for tuning in. Now, for today's episode. Welcome everyone to today's episode where we will be talking about male allyship. To address bias against women at work, we need men to also join in on the conversation and to be ready to have brave conversations about topics such as equitable hiring, equal pay, promotion. We need men who hold positions of power in leadership to use that influence and resources to advance the status of women, people of color, and marginalized communities. Male allyship is important in making sure that everyone is not only invited to the table, but is also heard and recognized for their contributions and truly feels a sense of belonging and psychological safety. To achieve equity, both men and women must advocate for it. And like they say, more inclusion for women, more growth for men. Here at Women Empower Global, we are determined to walk this path together with our men and engage our counterparts around the world to hold these difficult and challenging conversations. And with me today on today's episode is former executive White House chef, my friend, and an incredible human being, Martin Mongiello, to talk about male allyship. I want to do a quick introduction to you, Marty. Martin C.J. Mongiello. He is the chair of the Board of Trustees, the United States Presidential Service Center, and also the U.S. Presidential Culinary Museum. And being a former White House chef, you have cooked for hundreds of Hollywood stars, presidents from all over the world, a king, a queen, and several
Yeah, the royal family, and from Japan, Prime Minister Hashimoto. Many presidents, not just American presidents, but many presidents from across the earth, and different stars and glitterati, and it's just an opportunity to serve. It's always one more opportunity to serve.
Having met all these amazing people from around the world, what would you say is one of the most memorable moments for you in your career thus far?
Yeah, I was talking this morning in Rotary about that, in fact. It's very interesting. Rotary International. One of the most amazing people was Steve Jobs. He came to the White House one night for a dinner and stayed overnight. And I asked, why does it have his name? It doesn't have Apple. And they said, oh gosh, you didn't hear he was removed from the company and the campus and taken out. And I was like, are you kidding me, Steve Jobs? I mean, and he used to say crazy things, including at the White House. And when he went back to Apple, they begged him to come back, of course. But he used to say weird things that are very inspiring, like, we don't hire people to come to work here and do what they're told, or to follow some type of job specifications and duties and responsibilities. We hire them to come here and tell us what to do. People find that to be very threatening, Sunila, and off-putting. They're like, oh my gosh, I mean, who hires people to come to their corporation and start telling us what to do? The inclination often is, how about we take a lead pipe and wrap it across the back of their head, metaphorically, and we fire them by Friday for having the gall and audacity to open their stupid mouth and start telling people around here what to do. And now Apple, has become the first $1 trillion company in the world's history. So I say, you might want to actually look at the inspiration of a lot of the things going on in these $1 trillion companies. Amazon was the second one.
I mean, it's definitely interesting to see some noteworthy practices by large corporations, that are trying to take positive strides in DE&I. I recently read an article where it said that a large corporation had announced that it's tying executives' annual incentives to increasing the share of women and racial minorities in corporate leadership roles within a certain timeline. And then there are other companies that are also looking at initiatives such as diversity measures being taken to systematizing workplace cultural shifts and looking at how an organization can take steps to challenge the status quo. And then, we hear of organizations conducting DEI-focused town hall meetings, looking at building an organizational hierarchy for DEI, starting from top leadership all the way down to individual responsibility. And I definitely think there is more emphasis now, more than ever before, by DEI specialists and leadership given to making sure that DEI initiatives are looked at more intentionally with KPIs, away from just being symbolic. They're looking at systemic changes.
Their skin color, it pops up in my hippocampus. It's okay to have feelings, because feelings are neither right nor wrong. We learned that from Dr. Gary Smalley, who wrote Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. Feelings are neither right nor wrong, they just are. But your actions and what you do with that bias and unconscious bias and counteracting unconscious bias, that is what counts on Earth, okay? So, how you act upon your feelings is what is very important. And some of them that I have encountered, we passed a thing last year with your help. In fact, you were part of that work group in the World Council on breastfeeding stations. A lot of men, just don't even understand what women need in the workforce. And that's why in the beginning of your show today, I was so happy to hear you say we need to include men in fixing a lot of the problems towards women, with 52% of the workforce on Earth being female, and we have about 24 to 26% of women hold power positions on boards and in the C-suite. So there's an imbalance there. Like my grandfather, he one day I was in the back seat of the car. I'll give you a for instance. People always say, well, don't be ubiquitous, Marty. Be direct. I was in the back seat of my car. My grandfather sped up the car as a boy was going across the street. He wasn't actually going to hit him, but he sped up the car and he mumbled something under his breath. Damn Irish. And I was raised in a Catholic family. It wasn't until about 6 years ago I was watching a public broadcasting service, a PBS television series on the Italians in America. And I was watching, and it said that the Italians were not allowed to worship in the church on the main floor. They had to have secretive services underground of the church on the basement, And I had to pause the television right there, Sunila, and call my dad and say, Dad, you grew up in downtown Philadelphia with the old Italian family, the immigrants, because I'm like fourth generation. You grew up with these people. Is this what really went on? That the Irish were upstairs and the Italians were in the basement? And he's like, well, yeah, it's not anything I would bring up to you, but where are you hearing this from? What's happening? I'm like, I'm watching a big 2-night miniseries on television right now on PBS called The Italians. And I just was shocked, Dad. So it's okay to feel unconscious bias within yourself, but it's what you do with your actions and what you say out loud with your throat. That's what matters, okay? And so often, myself as an example, I grew up in a different ecosystem, but then I was taught in the American military, the most powerful battle force on Earth, that this is wrong. And women are our equals. But that doesn't mean that women need to be treated the same. You cannot treat a woman's needs in the workforce the same way you treat a male. But they are our equals.
I love that. And right there, that's equity. That's what equity is all about, right?
Yes. And if you're going to have inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion inclusion, then that means you want to get on board with what is it that women do need to be successful, because we're excited about our mothers being successful, our daughters, our nieces, our wives, our sisters. Every man I talk to is full pumped. When you start getting into their mom and talking to a man about his mom, you know, you're either going to get a fist in your mouth with your front teeth into the back of your throat, or it's going to be a very loving conversation. You start talking with other people about their mom, you know, and it's like we want them to be successful. So what is it for inclusion that we need to do to help them?
Talking about getting men, involved in that journey, when we talk about male allyship and having more men as allies at work, it means having men support women to advance them in the workplace. So speaking more about that, Marty, what do you think men think about when they think of challenges that women actually face?
The other day with UNICEF and on the United Nations live 2-day celebration of women hosted by Rotary, our president was talking about all the problems regarding sanitary products that are needed by women, publishing in textbooks that menstruation is a sin and filthy in African textbooks. And you know, there's a lot of things that are blocking diversity and inclusion because of these things that men are not talking about. Historically, the focus on compliance as a strategic level effort to demonstrate a positive impact on an organization's performance is now moving to where we're seeing, like, let's not have women lead those trainings all the time. Okay? Let's get some men up there to talk about what we're not going to do and tolerate at work with sexual harassment. And if you're looking to date somebody, we actually added it to our employee manual. We don't allow dating with anybody here at work any longer. Okay? If you want to date somebody, why don't you go meet somebody, you know, at the library, at a coffee house, at the local bar, at a nightclub, at a supermarket. But why don't you leave work alone? Because honestly, you know, we're also tired of, in the business climate, every time something happens, the person sues the company, whether it's a man or a woman. It's lawsuits all the time around interactivity of people doing things that affects diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's like, you know, work should be a wonderful thing of an achievement where we bring great results, whether it's work at a church, work at an NGO, work at a corporation. We bring wonderful intended business results to that, whether it's raising money for polio or we're at Microsoft International. And let's stop all of this stuff, because it is much more than a legal or moral requirement, you know, to provide diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's actually the right thing to do in the universe, isn't it, Sunila? Isn't it the right thing to do?
Absolutely, Marty.
Yeah.
I also love what you said about, it was interesting how you broke it down. You said there's compliance, but now we've evolved to more management, because even leadership is understanding that there's so much nuance that goes into it. So yes. How do you think culture influences that dynamic for male allyship, and what can we do about it, Marty? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, let's realize we're on shifting sand. We are not on solid ground. We are not on a rock foundation. The reason we are seeing only 24 to 26% of women in charge in C-suite positions, and it's because we are on shifting sand. We don't have a rock solid foundation on Earth to build on yet. Historically, the Earth culture of the humans has been to try to separate humans into different races. And while that may have been true a long time ago, there actually were different races on Earth. It's not true any longer. We have the American Anthropological Association has issued numerous times from their Board of Trustees. There is only one survivor race left on this particular planet, okay? So that race is called Homo sapien. Now, there were other races that lived here. There were Homo erectus, there was Cro-Magnon. There were many different races, okay? But they died off and faced extinction and are gone. There's a survivor race. It's only one race is here. And so people who say things like race wars, racial strife, oh, we're going to have a race and diversity committee formed. It immediately, educated people who hear that realize how uneducated they are to be talking about different races. So we have to realize we are on shifting sand. We are still building towards getting women into these positions, and we have got to dispel and get rid of this race philosophies on Earth. There's only one race that lives on Earth. So when the aliens land here and we try to explain to them who we are, we're going to tell them like there's one race left. Okay, we have different skin colors. And most science books for children, if you read what the kids are reading today, our daughter's in 5th grade, they teach that there's 5 skin colors amongst the human race today. Okay, black, white, brown, yellow, and red. I always say, like, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of the truth with the American Anthropological Association. Let's hear what the most noted scientists and doctors are saying. And that's going to be, it doesn't have to be the American Anthropological Association. It could be any major anthropological association. They're all saying the same thing. We have to stop talking about different races. It's lies, okay? Now we have skin colors here, and that is part of the confusion. And the final one I would mention that is really difficult is your social connections, Sanilla, the openness to learning, agility, and depth of decision making in any work group. People have to be allowed to reflect upon their own experiences and apply today's lessons by having an openness to learning and realizing that the human race is evolving right now. We're at a crossroads in time and history and space that we are actually evolving in a dynamic, unbelievable way. And that climate disenfranchises and angers and embarrasses many people. When you take away racial strife and you tell them that there's only one race on Earth, you're going to have people that don't want to hear that. They actually clung to the fact that they're white, or whatever. Okay. Also, we have to be cognizant of the fact that you have a lot of women who are very disenfranchised, bitter, and angry. And we saw that with Hillary Clinton when she ran for the American presidency. The exit polls showed that white women 64 years and older predominantly mentioned in the exit polls the reason they didn't vote for her was top 2 reasons. They had 5 reasons total. I'll give you the top 2 to keep it short. Number 1, women cannot, C-A-N-N-O-T in the English, women cannot do the job. Physically, they're not strong enough. And number 2 reason, women should not be in charge, okay? So that's one of the main reasons that Hillary Clinton lost the American presidency. We had American white women who were 64 years and older who voted for those top 2 reasons. The second one, should not, is very dominant on religious belief. They believe that it's wrong religiously for women to be in charge, whether it's running for office, a government office, or at a corporation. They just feel that it's wrong within their religion and church. So once you're armed with this type of information that no one's talking about, and these types of facts and figures, I say you're ready to actually really sit down and let's form a committee, a skin color committee and a DEI committee. Let's not mention race because there's only one race on Earth, so we don't want to sound stupid. And then when we go to do that, let's get like a little 90-pound lady, who's from like Indonesia with a dot on her forehead. Let's get a huge 350-pound black guy with a massive afro and a motorcycle jacket on. Let's have a bookworm come into the meeting who graduated from MIT with a pocket protector that looks like Bill Gates with a plaid shirt, sweater, and bow tie on. Let's get, an Arab gentleman, with his headdress on. Let's get all types of people that have never worked with each other before. This group, when we take a photo, ought to be the craziest photo that no one's ever seen. And that's where you have to start to try to address specific behaviors and to shape a successful and inclusive climate.
Received an award recently, the Gentleman of Hearts Awards, Men Who Empowered Women. Tell us about that, and congratulations. Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of a surprise from London, the Theatre for the Arts there, with Goha and Woha, the Women of Heart and the Gentlemen of Heart. And really we have Desiree Richardson to thank for all of that there in London. She was the one who initially was asking a lot of questions, and I told her I'm beyond awards at this point in my life. I'm 56. I'm uninterested in medals and awards. I have so many, it's stupid. Give it to somebody else. And Dr. Wahid Musa put me in for that award from Africa, and he just said, you're so insane. You're so insane. The stuff you're doing is insane. And I think, what pushed it over the top maybe was the 25,000 Nigerian women farmers that we recently supported with raising $497,550 That really shocked a lot of people, Sunila, when we did that. And we had about 40 days to raise the money, and we did it, I think, in 8 days. No one's ever seen anything like that before on kiva.org, KIVA.org, and in the United States Presidential Service Center Investment Portfolio Group. They really were shocked. They're like, you've hit an all-new, high for needing to go see a therapist, Marty, for $500,000. We're over here raising like $10,000 and $15,000 for women in business. And you announced, we did that. We did on International Women's Day. We invested in 6 women's companies live on the air. We had no idea who they would be. They were all picked by our 6 lady hosts on the show that I invented called I'm Speaking Now, named after Kamala Harris when she told the white man, I'm speaking. The former Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, she interrupted him and corrected him and said, I'm speaking. During that show, they did do that, but it was the next day I announced, now we're going to invest in 25,000 women farmers in Nigeria. And people were just like, honestly, go see a psychologist. Please, 25,000 women. Where did you get this idea from? So I was like, I'm not that brilliant. I didn't even think of this myself, but I want us to do this.
Love that, Marty. That's a real story, and that's a real deal. A lot of people talk about it, but I'm so happy that we have men out there in the world who are actually being that change and doing something about it, taking action. It's one thing to talk about it and advocate for it, and it's a completely different thing to take the time, the effort, and mobilize resources and go in there and make that change. I've got one more question for you, and that is this. For the men, as you know, it's a global audience that's coming into this podcast, that's listening in right now. To any of the men who is listening in thinking, you know what, I'm thinking of, how I can support more women as well in the workplace and becoming a male advocate for this cause. Any words of encouragement to them, Marty, from you? Your closing thoughts.
Absolutely. Men can help by creating psychological safety, belonging, and equity. Simply like when you meet women, don't get all up on top of them physically. I kind of step back. The other night I met the first woman president in the history of the world for Rotary International. We were at a dinner, and I went up to her. Of course, we had to wait like 30 minutes to see her. There were hundreds of people that were doing photos. Her name is Jennifer Jones from Canada. She's the first woman president of Rotary International in 117 years' time. I stood back from her. My daughter hugged her right away. My wife hugged her right away. I stood back from her and started telling her about Rotary International and the first Global Impact Club that we were starting that would include 18 women signing up on opening day, which has actually grown now. It's at about 20 women or 21 women. It's about 50% of the entire club. We have about 40 people opening up this brand new club. And she was stunned and shocked and actually said, "Excuse me?" And I told her, yeah, we have, at the time it was 18 women that had signed up in one day. She had never heard of such a thing. She was shocked. And so then, after talking with her for about 40 seconds, Sunila, she decided within her mind that she wanted to hug me publicly. And everyone watching watched her approach me and hug me. And I hugged her back, of course. So I say give women some space if you're a guy. Create psychological safety. Remove all, sexual promiscuity, sexual harassment, dirty talk, and that kind of stuff, from the workforce. It's not even accepted or good if it's a couple of guys around, and just get rid of it. Work is a place, to create success in industries, okay? And we would prefer those to be diverse industries of all types of people. And men should remember and be given the space to make a mistake too. Understand the animal that you're facing. Then you say to yourself, okay, we understand you, but we're going to give you the capability to make a mistake. It's not going to include touching, petting, sexual harassment, criminal activity, or anything. But if a guy says something that is really not the best thing to say, and I've done this myself, and a woman takes him aside who's a woman leader and says, hey, that really isn't the type of thing that goes over well with the ladies. You probably shouldn't do that again. Kicking a guy's ass is not metaphorically the best thing to do. If it was a simple mistake or an off joke that is inappropriate conduct, I say, even get another man. We would sometimes go talk to a man with a female chief petty officer and a male chief petty officer and say, hey man, we wanted to sit down, you got a coffee and we brought some pastry for you. And we wanted to talk about the other day in training where you mentioned this or that. That's probably not like a great example to use to get your point across. And here's why, and we didn't want to like beat you up and attack you and be heavy-handed, and we just thought we would sit with you over a cup of coffee and share to try to make things better, to make you better, to grow you, to groom you, to progress you, because it seems like you sure are trying hard, and that's why I asked Chief Elise to be here also.
There are men who are wonderful allies. I have friends in other parts of the world who are very supportive of the work I do and the mission. There is also research to suggest that one of the biggest challenges have been for men at recognizing gender discrimination and harassment in real time. So we're talking about that lack of awareness and pretty much, men having a really tough time in understanding when things go wrong for women and, being cognizant about the experience that their female colleagues might be having. And similarly, we also are aware that, women are reluctant to share negative experiences with men because they know that on some level that men don't share those experiences. So I think that comes down to, as men, looking at how they can be more mindful and sensitive about the real challenges that women face and call it for what it is. Yes, there are challenges happening, and yes, there is discrimination taking place, and yes, there are double standards, and it's not the same equal playing field. And just having that awareness, I think, can go a long way, because with more awareness then comes the clarity, and then with more clarity comes to really choosing how one can proceed with taking the right proper action to support and uplift the women who we know are experiencing difficulty at work. If you're new to the concept of male allyship, but you're interested to be an ally and you thought today's episode was interesting, There are things that men can do to be an ally, and that's primarily by increasing their awareness on gender inequities that take place in the workplace. So observe, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. And, just like we talk about the need for emotional intelligence in leadership in an organization as individuals and in teams, also expand your knowledge and understanding on gender dynamics in the workplace and society at large. Become more self-aware how you might be contributing towards this, either positively or negatively. And really take it upon yourself to increase your awareness and read and learn more about it, the data on gender discrimination, on sexism. Keep your eyes open and also pay attention to what's being said and unsaid, like the nonverbals that could indicate that, your colleagues at work, your female colleagues are not really doing that well, and evaluate. Look into your organization. Are the women in your organization included in initiatives or are they excluded? Are they given equal opportunities for promotion and succession and training? Are women given credit in the same way as the men at work? Are job descriptions tend to use masculine words or, that implies bias, or is it gender neutral? Are interview questions gender-based or gender neutral? And look at remuneration. Are women compensated equitably? So, there are so many different things that you can think about to really gauge and see where you are and your organization is at as it relates to DEI. Does it currently have a strong vibrancy and adaptation to DEI and really creating that workplace that is truly inclusive? Or does it need work? I think we just need to, the authentic starting point, an effective starting point is to look inside and just really observe and see, hey, where are we standing right now, truly? Let's not beat around the bush. Let's just really be honest and direct about that. And I think that's where it starts, that sense of honesty, facing the hard facts, and then taking action. This podcast was initiated by Women Empowered Global, a global organization that empowers women through education, career advancement, and entrepreneurial programs, with a network reach in over 40 countries across 6 continents. To learn more, visit www.womenempoweredglobal.com. See you on the next episode.